Great to be with all of you. And we are going to jump in today's topic of visual learning. And I love visual learning in a lot of aspects, but Canva makes it so easy to do. And specifically in this session, this 30 minutes together, I'm going to focus on infographics. And the idea of creating infographics in Canva is pretty cool and pretty simple. Now, you can ask it to create infographics, and then you can look at the visual design side and how students learn and create infographics. So that's where we're gonna kind of focus. If I've not met you before, my name is Nathan Wells, and I have the privilege of leading these monthly, sometimes bi-weekly. Lately, it's been bi-weekly, so every other week. And today, our focus is kind of what I've already said, but specifically around student learning with visuals. And so you can see this fun little statistic here that has been gone through a few different studies. So I found a similar number in a few different places. So I just kind of landed on this basic number of 65% of visual information is retained by students versus 10% of text alone. What I think is key about that is when we're presenting to students in class. So for example, I was a 7th grade social studies teacher. When I was presenting to students, to my 7th grade social studies students, let's just agree that most students wouldn't put social studies history as their first topic they want to learn about. So part of that is getting them excited about the topic and being able to understand the topic and be able to jump in right where I am at. So that's part of it. And then the other thing is being able to get students to remember things that are really important, especially if you think about your topics that you teach. And some of us are going to argue all topics, but those topics that build on each other every year. So our math, our language arts, right, especially, and some of the other topics as well. But those especially when we are really dependent on text alone, students aren't retaining that. And study after study shows that. Students need to interact with the material. They need to hear about it. They need to read about it. They need to see it. And all of those things work together to help students retain it. And if we look at some of the other things that most of you maybe have seen in your teacher education courses, like I did, is this, if a student can teach it, they're going to retain it. So that's even higher level, right? But today, our focus is on visual learning, specifically the idea of infographics. So point 2 here is if you had to transform all of your dense curriculum into visual formats, it would take you forever, right? So we want to give you a practical way to create infographics in Canva that you can really get started with right away. So that's where we're going. Again, if I haven't met you, my name is Nathan Wells. I was a 7th grade social studies teacher, tech coach, coordinator of education technology for 17 years, not coordinator for 17 years, but those 17 years in Phoenix, Arizona. And then now, a year and a half ago, moved to the Charlotte, North Carolina area. So I'm now on the East Coast and currently in the Rochester Airport in New York. And there's lots of snow on the ground. It's beautiful. And what we're going to focus on is I'm going to use some examples that I had from my class and other kind of middle grade classes. So that's really where I'm going. And then I'm also going to look at a differentiation between grade levels. So we're going to have some kind of examples that go both directions. So 3 core principles. So if you wanted to like save something, this would be one of those. And I have a slide towards the end that kind of breaks this down as well. Visual hierarchy. Whenever we think about creating visuals in a class, and I'll be the first to say I was not good at this when I was creating slides for my 7th grade students. It's one of those times, which all of us get like this in our career, but I wish I could go back to year 2, 3, Nathan, of teaching and be able to like drop in some of these hints, right? Like we learn so much through our career, but one of the things I learned early on was font size. Pretty basic. And that goes right into visual hierarchy. The most important things should stand out. They should be the largest and highest contrast. We'll come back to that word. Also, we don't want there to be too much at once. There's so many times we tell people, okay, that slide is so dense, right? Or that graphic is so dense that it's hard to even know where my eyes should go. So think about breaking it down. And if it's a small graphic, maybe 3 things. If it's a bigger graphic where they're meant to find multiple things across it, maybe it's up to 7. But really think about how we break this down small and easily digestible pieces so that we can easily know what's important and be able to remember it, because that's the key here. And then consistent visual language. A lot of times when I talk to school leaders, we talk about consistent language when we're describing things, when we're talking about school policy, when we want everybody to be able to be on the same page. But when we work with our students on remembering things and then being able to understand a topic, visual language is just as important. So if we're using an icon, let's use that same icon every time we come up to that topic, to that subtopic, to that keyword. If we're using colors, different colors across a presentation or an infographic or any type of graphic, let's make sure that color has purpose. Not that it's just cute, right? But that there's actually purpose behind it. And spacing. If I go back a slide, you'll notice something, hopefully, that when you look at my graphics here, there's enough space in between them, the little half circles. There's enough space in between them that you can differentiate between the two, but also notice, what is it I want to stand out? What is it about that makes it stand out? Now, in other circumstances, I actually would have created an entire slide that would have been just this: students retain 65% of visual versus 10%. That would have been its own slide in some circumstances. But because I wanted to give you all of our intro at the same time, I could put it here, but I still left space here. But you notice this half circle is slightly bigger than this one. The students retaining of visual information is bigger than the text below it. And the 65% is hopefully almost immediately where your eyes went when you joined or when you saw this slide come on. So it's visually the same color as the graphic, same to 10%, and it's larger and more spaced differently than everything else on the page. So I want it to stand out. So that's my quick little example. So let's look at some other examples. So when we think about an infographic, the one on the left is probably what comes to mind for most of us. Maybe like a timeline or Venn diagram, possibly, depends on your background and what you've seen. And one thing I want to point out with these is how they're sitting here. So when you look at these different graphics, I want to call out the differences between these two. And maybe even you can think to yourself, you may notice they're the same topic because I'm comparing and contrasting them. What is it that stands out? And you don't have to actually answer this, but just think to yourself, what is it that stands out on the left-hand side versus the right? What do your eyes go to first? What makes them stand out? What do you think a student would lock into? For me, the one on the left, I see some a lizard, some sea life, and immediately went to the leaf with the word photosynthesis. Even if I don't know what photosynthesis is, I see a leaf with a big word on it, right? On the right, the first thing I see is 80% and 5 million. Maybe the picture at the top, if you like those kind of pictures, right? If you have some younger students or students that are really into wildlife, maybe that's what they see first. And that's not bad, but something else I want to call out here is, what does 80% and 5 million have to do with life science vocabulary? Not really anything. So do we want those to be the biggest things on the page? So trying to think through that process is really helpful, because this infographic, it's supposed to be helping us understand life science. And the one on the left, you can really tell it's focused on the vocabulary. One on the right has the same vocabulary, but they don't look like the most important thing on the page. I'm probably not going to remember them just by this infographic alone. There's honestly, on the one on the right, there's too much going on. I don't actually know what I should be remembering. I'm probably going to remember 80% and 5 million, even though I have no idea what that's tied to. So it's important to contrast some things and understand kind of the different pieces and the possibilities and really what's important. The one on the left, it's easy to see the word and definition. It's easy to know what we're talking about. I have a visual for every word to help me understand that. The second one, adaptation, I may not know on my own without teacher support what that has to do with a lizard. Maybe by reading the definition and considering this is made for middle grades, maybe I do. But it helps me see the most important things up front. So that's what we want to remember here. Now, we also might think about different types of graphic organizers. So let's think about that for a moment. So these are 3 different types of graphic organizers. And I want you to be thinking about what is most helpful with what maybe you teach, or a unit that's coming up, or a lesson even that you can be working on. So the one on the left is more stages. So we're looking at things in an order, and that dotted line kind of helps us with that. More of a timeline variation, right? So I could look at the one on the left and even put numbers on there, 1, 2, 3, 4, or dates, right? If it was on the timeline side. But I think stages, you might use numbers, and it's easy to kind of see what's going on. Now, there's a couple of things I would change on the left-hand side, but for the most part, it really helps things stand out. And I'm just going to call out quickly, these are 3 templates in Canva. I'm going to show in a moment. I didn't change these. I didn't mess with them. I did not create them. These are from Canva, just in their template library. And the one on the left, the thing I might change right away is some of the colors. For instance, the word photosynthesis at the top and the little brief definition underneath it, understanding the process of plant energy, or not definition, but explanation. Those colors aren't the easiest to see. So understanding the process of plant energy, because it's white text, that light green makes it hard to see. It's visible, but you notice light absorption. Plants capture sunlight using chlorophyll in their leaves for energy conversion. That is a lot easier to see, right? Because you have that really light text on a really dark background, that dark green. The other thing that's hard for me to see is the pictures. So this leaf with a sun behind it, well, that's talking about light absorption. But because it's underneath it and not across from it, my eyes go to this graphic or this image when I think about light absorption. So I might move some things around. So some things to be thinking about. So let's look at a comparison. So comparison, this could be like a Venn diagram, if you like Venn. Or I said it like it's a person, if you like that type of graphic. But I actually like these kind of columns. I think this is really helpful to have them right next to each other. So colonial versus modern society, labor. So work was more manual, involving farming and trades. Modern jobs are diverse with many offices and text, right? So you can see the differences and they're lined up so that visually they're easy to follow and easy to go through. The thing I would call out about this graphic organizer is size. So colonial versus modern is really helpful. That's big. It's easy to see. We know what the main topics are. You notice the inverse of the colors is really nice. So the word modern, the text is in the same color as the background of the comparison blocks, and the background of modern is the color of the text. So I like that visual flipping of the colors so we know what's most important right out the gate. But when we look at the little description under each of these, that gets really hard to see and is not as memorable. So again, thinking about size and color, I would actually make the text bigger in every single one of these. And I think there's enough room to do that safely without like messing up or going over the size, right? So I would always maximize text size as much as I can. And sometimes it's okay to create 2 graphics, right? Like if the text needs to be bigger so it's as visually, so it's visual and easy to read. But that means I now need to split this into 2 infographics. That's okay. Focus on one aspect in one graphic and a different aspect in a second graphic. There's ways to split that up. And I think that's important for like slideshows too. We say that a lot. Like, okay, this needs to be 3 slides because there's so much text and information going on this slide. That's okay. So that's something to think about too. And the thing with infographics is they can be really long. Sometimes a long infographic is almost more helpful because it it's memorable. It knows it stands out and it's something we need to see. This left-hand side, where we think of this hierarchical graphic, a pyramid in this case, it doesn't have to be a pyramid, but the pyramid is a nice visual. Now, again, this is just the 7 basic human needs. It's just the one I could find in the Canva template library really quickly. So, but you could change this to stages of a bill, right? There's my social studies coming out. You could change this to food pyramid, although that, we know is changed according to the federal government. You can change this to animals and animal kingdom and like who's on the top of the animal kingdom, right? So think about how you could use that. But the hierarchical one is really nice because you have those size blocks. I also want to call out on this graphic that they didn't squish the text to make it fit in it. So for instance, self-fulfillment needs. That's one of the longer statements on here, and they didn't try to like squeeze it inside the triangle to make it fit in the graphic. They used the arrows, which are a nice call out, and just put everything outside of it. So also don't get stuck in, oh, my graphic is only this big. How am I going to make this work? Because all of my graphics I've shown so far, the process and comparison, the 2 on the last slide, right? They're rectangles and kind of skinny. Make it a square, right? Like it's okay to kind of play that. It doesn't have to fit in a certain template or exactly like the template gave it to you. So just some things to call out and be thinking about. So before I move on to that, let's look at the Canva template library. So I'm logged into Canva with my educator sign in. This is the home page. You can see the most recent things I've worked on. And then up here at the top of the page, I've got 3 tabs: Your Designs, Templates, and Canva AI. I also on the left-hand side have some options that I can get to some of this. Under More, I'm also going to see templates. So I can get to templates in both places. I'm just going to use the one at the top of the screen. That seems to be the quickest and easiest. You notice how my screen changed slightly. So now it's focused on templates. So I can just start typing, or I can scroll. And when I scroll, it's going to give me the templates that have been used most often lately, templates that I've maybe looked for, or things similar to what I've looked for lately. And then you can also narrow in if you know the type of templates you want. I know I need a doc. I know I want an educational presentation. I know I want a poster, right? So you can also narrow it there. But I can just start typing here. So I'm going to do infographic. And then let's think of a topic I don't have up there. We'll do air travel, since I'm sitting in an airport. Okay. And here we're going to see some infographic templates. Tips for packing. That's awesome. And places to visit. Okay. I was thinking history of travel. I should have typed that in more clearly. History of air travel graphic. Let's do that. History of air travel. Maybe this will get me more. There we go. Okay. So there we can see the evolution of that's communication tools, air pollution. That's funny. So these are kind of interesting, but here's the key too. Sometimes the trick is not that Canva is going to create it all for you, but finding one that you can make yours, right? That's definitely the key here. I actually don't like any of them so far because they have a very like old history look to them, which is not as helpful. And I really want something that is a little bit more modern. Oh, that one's kind of interesting though. All right, let's click on that one. Oh, Museum of History. Sorry, I saw the 2 airplanes. I thought maybe that was going to be it. But I do like something like this that lets me do a little explanation and an image. So let's customize that image and we can play with that one. So it's looking through here and finding something similar to what you have in mind, or maybe it inspires you, right? Gives you some ideas, but not like expecting Canva to have the exact thing you're teaching is something to remember. There's that history, US history, so that's a timeline one like we were talking before. How to survive long flights, that one's really funny. Perfect experience, cool. So definitely some good ones in here to help us get going. And you also have to think about how many pieces. So as I'm like scanning these quickly, some of these have like 8 different steps to them. Some of them 4 and 5 seems to be the most common. So how many steps do you need? How many pieces, maybe I should say, do you want students to remember? Is it only 4 things? Is it 6 things? Like, what is it that you need that students to understand about this topic? And then how does that fit in? So I'm going to actually I'm gonna do more of a timeline. I'm gonna grab this one. That one's kind of cool. And look, it says music, right? I don't need anything about music, but I like the style of it. And it gives me some space to add in the things that are most helpful for what I need to do. So that's the one I'm gonna use. Excuse me. And you notice with this, and I'm gonna use the little zoom here at the bottom, I have a nice text box, somewhere I can add a date or some type of quick text, and then a place where there's an image on each one. And if you've never gotten into design elements, I'm just going to give a couple of quick things. For one, if I'm going to talk about air travel, plants have nothing to do with what I'm talking about. So I'm going to delete those little plants. And you notice in Canva with these templates, everything can be selected and changed, edited, flipped around, whatever it is. Canva makes their templates completely open to being edited. So I'm just going to delete a couple of those. And then I can change this to history of air travel. And this is my Y on history. So that's easy, right? And again, I want that to stand out. So I'm actually going to get rid of that little thing there. And I'm going to click on this, and you can grab the corner, actually make it bigger, and it's going to make the font go up. I actually like that right on the like notebook paper. And you notice the pink little guidelines. Hopefully you can see that okay. The pink little guidelines help me line it up to things easily. And in this case, I want to line it up with that center and the top of the page right there. So that's perfect. And so then I can change this text, right, which we'll come back to in a second. And then I can start changing graphics and adding in my text. So if I already had this in a curriculum document, in a presentation, if I already had this somewhere, I could just add in that text pretty easily. What I'm actually going to do, though, is let's start with the images, and then I'll show you some things about text. So for this image, for instance, I'm going to go to Elements, and I'm going to say First Airplane, because I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. Probably type in Wright Brothers as well. There we go. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So I can grab these. Now, notice when I go to graphics, there's a couple different styles here. And if you want students to retain, to help them remember these, remember that color idea. So right now I have a tan background on my page. What is going to stand out the best and help them remember the different stages of aircrafts? So for instance, this brown one is not going to stand out on that tan. The black absolutely will, maybe even the red. Let's just look at it. Yeah, the red's not bad. I can resize that by grabbing the corners. And honestly, I would probably like spin it just a little bit so it looks like it's taken off. And then let's see the black. The black really stands out well also, but it definitely doesn't stand out as much. So I'm not going to use that one. So let's grab this little red one. So he's going to fly over there. Sometimes I like to have them kind of on top of each other, so it kind of stands out more. When it's kind of on top of a box, it actually like stands out a little bit more sometimes. So be thinking about that. The other thing I want to show quickly is, let's say I just want to put first airplanes, and I don't actually have text. I'm not really sure what to put in this box. What I can do is I can use this Ask Canva feature. And so here I'm gonna say, hey, Canva. So it says at Canva automatically. What should I know about the first airplanes? And it will actually, whoops, not enter. I have to hit the little button. It will actually answer this for me and give me some ideas. And this is where I can then drop that right into that box. Now, it may not, that's what I was gonna say, it may give me too much and I may not get exactly what I need, but I can ask it to make it shorter. So rewrite text, shorter. So this is, you can use it and you're not having to leave Canva. That's the idea here. When the Canva education team got feedback from folks, one of them was they would have to go out to ChatGPT or to Copilot or Gemini or wherever they're going and get information and then bring it in. And instead, I want to do it right here. Oh, look at that. Oh, that was my mistake. I was talking and not thinking. Rewrite is looking at the little paragraph I'm clicked on and then making it shorter. So that's my mistake. So I would edit that and go back and have it rewrite this one. But let's keep going just for sake of time. Oops. All right. So hopefully that gives you some ideas. The next thing I want to give you an idea about too is the difference between our younger learners and older learners, and even differentiating within your own class. If you know you have different groups of students and the way that they're going to process that information. So for younger learners, one of the keys on this page is it's limited in text, it's limited in concepts. So I'm just going to use the water cycle for my 3 examples here. And for younger learners, I want to make it as easy and simple for them to process and quickly. So condensation, precipitation, collection, evaporation. Simple, easy to see graphics and nice and big. For my middle learners, middle grades, I can start adding a little more concept to it. So I have sunlight provides energy that changes liquid into vapor. So I've got a little more text on the page, but the visuals are still pretty easy to look at. I've got my text in easy to see places. This white on green maybe isn't the best, so that I might want to think about how, I can take this, how I can take this white on green text and maybe move it off to the side so it's black on white, just like the rest of these. But otherwise, this is pretty spread out. It's easy to see. I still get some concepts. I like the little graphic of the evaporation here, the river coming down to help with groundwater. So it's still pretty easy to see, and a middle grade student could probably figure this out. And then a little bit more advanced, I want to really call out something here. There's higher concepts here, but the graphics are still easy to digest. So just because I'm not working with a first grader doesn't mean the visuals can become overwhelming. So something I think is important to remember is no matter your age of learners, adult learners that I deal with all the time, and some of you do too as trainers, right? Versus a first grader, still need to be able to see everything clearly and know where their eyes should be tracking. And in this case, my concepts, evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and all the other ones are called out nicely white on dark blue. So even though they're in front of a cloud or in front of the dirt or wherever they are, it's the same color, same font and font size. Makes it really easy for my eyes to move across the graphic. Those little arrows help me follow which direction things are going, right? So there's a lot that's easy for me to track here. Now, I also just want to mention, I did not create this. This is not, Canva did not create this. This is not a template. I actually don't know off the top of my head, maybe Copilot. I think it was Copilot to create this graphic, and it did a phenomenal job. That's just something I want to call out. I didn't find a template I was thrilled with in Canva for this more complex graphic, and so it helped me create one. So just want to call that out. So that is something to think about. Okay, so think about infographic templates. Search education infographic or process infographic. Process means it's going to create, or it's going to give you those kind of rectangle ones that had steps in them, so for a process. Also, does it match the type of thing you're talking about? Is there enough white space, right? That's something I appreciated about these water cycle ones, is they all gave you enough open space that it was easy for your eyes to move across it. This one's probably the most complicated in not having a lot of space. Even though there's more to this graphic, it's still easy to track it. It's easy for my eyes to go across it because of the color coordination. Can I easily modify it? So something that maybe you've done before, but if I wanted to, where'd my graphic go? There we go. If I wanted to, I could click in the back, that's the tan background, and I can edit that color pretty quickly and easily. So I can make it stand out darker or lighter or whatever it is. So how are the colors supporting what you're doing? And then font sizes, especially for grade level. But that making those fonts bigger and smaller makes a big difference as well. So choose one thing, right, to try. Don't try to change everything at once. Make sure that you are giving it a shot and seeing the different options we've kind of talked about. And then biggest thing I would ask is let students do this. I assume if you have a Canva education account, your students probably do too. Maybe not everywhere, but a lot of times our students will as well. So give this as an opportunity. Let our students get creative. That's what's so fun about Canva and about some of these design tools that are out there now, is it's safe and easy for students to use and be creative and have fun. So they're learning about the water cycle. They're learning about the Civil War. They're learning about fill in the blank. Have them create an infographic to explain their learning instead of just that boring multiple choice quiz. So give them a chance to do it. Time-saving tip is to create an infographic for them and then have students duplicate it. So you can send it as a view-only link or a template link, which is great. So thanks for joining me. I know I went a couple minutes over. Hopefully you got some tips and ways that you can jump in and get started right away. Love for you to stay connected with us. You can subscribe to our newsletter, both through the QR code and the link that's on the screen. The QR code also connects you with us on social media. Love to stay connected. We do these webinars sometimes twice a month, at least once a month throughout the year. And then we also post a lot of helpful things from the different platforms we support, and love to have you join us. So thanks again for jumping in. Great to see some of you live. And if you're watching the recording, look for some of the resources in the notes as well. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon or wherever you are. Take care.